men down, bullies, blow the men down.
We wait, blow the men down.
Blow the men down, bullies.
A few months ago, I did the first installment, or the first part, of my spa refurbishment. If you recall, I saved the mast, the aluminum mast and boom, from the donor boat that I had bought. It was a 23-foot Olympic Dolphin. The mast was too long, as was the boom, and I cut those down to the proper size based on my design for my new pocket cruiser sailboat. I only got as far as removing all the hardware, and that in itself was pretty difficult. And I didn't go any further for the simple reason that it was early in the season, the weather was much too cold. There's a certain temperature range to use the paint strippers and paint the primers on and paints and everything else. And it was just way too cold. This is Maine. Now that the mast and the boom is free of all the hardware, and it's just bare poles, both of them are bare poles, I'm going to apply a stripping chemical that's designed for metal, and I'm going to take the original coating off completely. I'm going to strip it down, the chemical, and then I'm going to clean it up mechanically. I'll be scraping stuff off with just a putty scraper, but then I'll go over it with a sander and other things. And so here are the spas laid out, the mast and the boom. As you can see, there's nothing on them. They're just bare poles. I have all the equipment here ready to go. I got this. I have this paint remover here, stripper. I don't think you can see it too well in that not very good light, but that's what I'm using. You're gonna have rubber gloves. You know, you gotta have your PPE. Rubber gloves is necessary. Nasty chemicals in this stuff. Got a putty scraper. I've got goggles because these chemicals are so nasty. You really don't want this stuff coming up in your eyes. And even though I have glasses on, these goggles have side protection. It's just good to have. A respirator is good to have if you don't have very good ventilation. However, I'm doing this outside, so and there's a bit of a breeze blowing, so I don't have to worry about that too much. That's about the best ventilation you can get. I have some cans of acetone and paint thinner for helping with cleanup and so forth. And the first thing I have to do is the instructions call for using a metal can for putting the stripper in, and then it says to move along and apply a heavy layer of stripper on the surface, and then you have to wait about 15 minutes before you try it. If it scrapes up easily, you just go ahead and remove it with a scraper or a putty knife or something. Otherwise, you might have to wait a little bit longer. It might need a second application. So I'm just going to follow the instructions. The instructions say that before you start, make sure you shake this well. I'm not sure what well is, but maybe we'll call that good. And then it says to put it into a metal container. Notice I'm wearing rubber gloves. And it says once the can is open, you have to use it up within 3 months of the time you first pop that top. But I bought it really just for the mast and the boom. And then it says use a metal container, which I'm doing, and now I'm going to apply it. It says to brush this stuff on in one direction only. No problem, we can do that. And so I'm going to do these top sides first, and then when I'm finished, I'll go back and I'll roll these over 180 degrees and do the other side. It's been about 10 minutes since I first started applying this chemical, the stripping chemical, and it probably won't show up on the camera, but and it says to wait 15 minutes before you start scraping, but if I look at it very closely, I can already see small bubbles in the paint, the original surface, starting to come up. And again, I don't know if that's going to show up on this GoPro, but and I've coated both the mast and the boom, and I got to wait a few more minutes, another 5 minutes, and we'll see if I can start scraping. Waited for 15 minutes, and it does look like there was a clear coat on the surface that it has stripped, but the base coat hasn't budged yet, so that's fine. I can, according to the instructions, I can go back over it with a second treatment. You want to get that surface layer off first, and the reason I'm using this bucket under here is that these chemicals are very nasty, and I don't want all this stuff that I'm scraping off to go into the ground, because like most people in Maine, our drinking water is well water, and I don't want this leaching into our water table. Okay, I have this self-etching primer. It comes ready to spray. It's supposed to spray it, but and it's designed to go right on aluminum. I only need to put one coat of this on because that will adhere itself to the aluminum, give a good bond, and then provide a good substance for a regular metal primer to bond to it. So I'm going to try rolling it on, even though it's thinned out and ready for spraying. I can roll on a couple of coats. It dries very quickly. I just not in the mood to do any spraying today. It's a little bit windy. Well, as it turns out, I can roll it on, even though it's very thin. I will get some runs, but this dries so quickly that once I apply it, all I have to do is just go back over it. And of course the runs are a little bit thicker, so they pick up into the roller, and in the meantime the rest of it is drying, so it doesn't keep running and sagging. And you just have to develop a little, somewhat of a technique of how you go over it after you first apply it. All I need really is just this one coat of this stuff, and it'll etch itself into the metal for a good solid bond. Then I have another primer, a metal primer, that'll go over the top of this, and it'll bond to this primer. I now have one coat of etching primer on both the mast and the boom, and it's getting close to 6 p.m. so I'm going to knock off for the day, go get some dinner. Tomorrow, well, weather permitting, I think it might rain tomorrow, but on the next clear day I'll come out here and I will take one of those Scotch-Brite scrubby pads and I'll give it a quick little scrub, and then I will apply another coat of primer, only not the same kind. It'll be a metal primer, but it's a bit heavier, thicker than this self-etching primer that I applied. Yesterday I applied the first coat self-etching primer on both the mast and the boom. And today I'm going to take a Scotch-Brite pad and I'm going to rub it over the surfaces, scuff it up just slightly, and then I'm going to apply the second coat of primer, although this time it's going to be a different type of primer. It's a Rust-Oleum product, and it's for, well, it's one of their marine coatings line, and it's for metal for above the waterline. So that's perfect to use on the aluminum mast and boom. Hey, I'm doing this under conditions that are not exactly ideal. Right now it's overcast, there's high humidity, there will be rain according to the updated weather forecast for today, just a little bit later this afternoon, but I should have at least a couple of hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours, to get this applied. I'm hoping that it's at least dry to the touch. So I have that second coat of primer on now, just on one side, and I won't bother to video the putting it on the second side because it's just a repeat of what you have already witnessed. So I have at least one coat of finish paint on the mast and the boom. The ends of the mast and boom have 2 coats already, and there'll be at least a couple more coats to go on here. And I'm not going to bother to video that, take video of it, because it's just more of the same, sanding things down and brushing it off and applying another coat of paint. And I think I've made you watch too much of that already. I mean, it's not much more exciting than sitting around watching the paint dry. But, well, see what it looks like right now. I took off the masking tape on the ends so I can get a decent, nice sharp line there between the 2 colors. And it's not the best paint job in the world, but that's okay. I'm only going for a workboat finish, not a fine yacht finish. I don't even care about that kind of stuff. I'm not very yachty. But this is going to do the trick. This is going to conclude my, this segment of the mast refurbishment, part 3. So as always, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Add a comment in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Much appreciated. Check out my Patreon page. See you next time.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor?